sense to others.
American, young, old, rich, poor.
I'm Judy Strand, and on behalf of the Commission for Senior Services, I welcome you to this great event, the first ever Oregon White House Conference on Aging. Thank you for being here. I'm really honored to represent the Governor's Commission. It is a vital voice of advocacy for all Oregonians, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the ideas that you're going to bring forward today that are going to inform our nation. I also want to make some special acknowledgments of the sponsors and contributors for today's event. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee. I also need to acknowledge Ann McQueen, who staffed this conference, and I would like her to be identified. Where is Ann? Where is she? There she is. So this would not happen without her, and I want all of you to know that. Believe me, we couldn't have done it. So great gratitude there. I wanted to start by acknowledging the fact that many of our cultures, especially our indigenous cultures, value elders in a way that is exemplary, and that many of our immigrant communities that now live in Oregon are showing us that same example. However, I believe that our dominant culture has not yet caught on, and I think that that has prompted a number of comments from a number of aging advocates. One is Gloria Steinem, who said, "At my age, people often ask me if I'm passing the torch. I explain that I'm keeping my torch, thank you very much, and I'm using it to light the torches of others. Because only if each of us has a torch will there be enough light." So in light of all of that, I wanted to think a little bit about what we're focusing on today. In Seattle at the regional conference, which a few of us had a chance to attend, we talked about a lot of important things: economic security, underpaid caregiver staff, absence of culturally specific and culturally responsive aging, lack of mental health services, lack of geriatric specialists, inadequate transportation, all kinds of issues that all of you know better than I do. And all of those are incredibly important. At the same time, we know that in Oregon, we've been a state with some innovative ideas. We've stepped forward in prevention and community-based care and person-centered practice in a very bold way, and I know that we'll do that again today, and that's why we want to hear your voices. I also would like to challenge us to think beyond just looking at the needs one by one and look at the interconnectedness of the needs and what that might bring to our minds in terms of a creative solution for this growing population of older adults. And what if we looked at the ways we can capitalize on the age wave and view that 1 in 5 of us who will be 65 and older by 2030 as a true untapped resource for our community as a whole? A few years back, I was 15, it was 1971, I heard about Maggie Kuhn, who we know started the Grey Panther movement, and she was really of great interest to me at that time, and I wrote her a letter. And of all things, she wrote back to me. I found her letter recently in my family's home when I was cleaning out the home. And in that letter, she encouraged me to be an advocate and fight ageism. She was, for me, one of those lights, one of those torches. And there was something that I'm sure one of you sent me recently that talked about what older adults could be for us in our society. And Maggie Kuhn said that as risk takers, older adults can change the world. They can humanize society. They have 5 roles that she talked about. They are mentors who teach the young, mediators who resolve civil, racial, and intergenerational conflict, monitors of public bodies who serve as watchdogs of City Hall and Congress, mobilizers of social change, and motivators of a society who urge people away from self-interest and toward public good. Our world desperately needs those 5 roles. And think of it. Think of all the conflicts, the intercultural conflicts, the global issues that affect our planet. This is the time to bring our elders into the public square. And I know when I talk about them, the older adults, I'm looking at a room where we understand that they is we, because we want that place when it's our time to humanize and heal the world. And I hope that today we'll come up with some fantastic ways to do that. Okay, so getting to the nitty-gritty, you have these lovely green folders, and as we go forward, they will guide you, and they are color-coded and everything. So in here, you will see the agenda. You'll see a number of pieces of paper on the right. There are issue brief sheets that are color-coded by each issue that we're talking about today, and that will help give you a little background information. And there are some conference evaluations that are purple, and we really would love to have your feedback about how we're doing with this conference today. So I'd now like to introduce Marty Cahill, the Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital CEO. Since 2013, Marty has been Chief Operations Officer of Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital and has served as the CEO at Samaritan North Lincoln Hospital and Director of Physician Relations for Samaritan Health Services. We're very thankful for this lovely conference space. So, Marty?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is a great event. Thank you for your participation, and welcome to our event center. We've literally, in the last 2 weeks, opened our hotel. We've got this event center for the last year, so we're starting to utilize it. So let us know how it goes. Give us feedback. We would greatly appreciate that. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation, the coordinators for this event. I think that your help today will be useful in directing policy and direction for the next 10 years. Some of the things that you're going to be talking about and hearing about today: retirement security, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and elder justice. And I think together we can all build healthier communities, and I believe that the work here today will be heard back in DC by this summer. So I wish you well. If you have time, there's a jam-packed agenda for you today. But if you can get out and take a look at the garden, there's a Japanese healing garden right next to this facility, nice koi pond. So go out and relax a little bit in between your sessions. Have a good day and welcome. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Danny Ledesma from Governor Kate Brown's office. Danny is the governor's Housing and Human Services Policy Advisor, and prior to coming to the governor's office, she served as the Director of Equity, Policy, and Communications at the City of Portland's Housing Bureau. Danny?
Hi, good to see you. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our Governor, Kate Brown, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for all the work that you're going to do today and that you do every day on behalf of older adults so that to ensure their safety, that they're financially secure, and that their needs are being met. As you know, our communities are stronger, they can thrive when the outcome of the work that you are doing is fulfilled. And as you know, our governor is a strong supporter and champion of the work that you do, and is here to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as we contend with some of the issues that face older adults. So today, as you contend with and discuss and come up with the best and possible ideas around policy change impacting retirement security, healthy aging, elder justice, and long-term supports and services for older Americans, we're really looking forward to the outcome of these conversations that you're having and also how we can support that moving forward. We'd like to thank our hosts that are here, today, all of the keynote speakers and panelists for sharing your wisdom and information with us. And we'd really like to thank the Governor's Commission on Senior Services for your service, your ongoing service and commitment to this issue. We'd like to thank our chair, Judy Strand, and what the governor would like to make sure that you all know is that we're ready to work with you. We've got really strong leaders at the state. Our DHS director, Erin Kelly Seal, to work with you, and we look forward to continuing this important work. So thank you.
Thanks, Danny. We now get to hear from Erin Kelly Seal, the director of the Oregon Department of Human Services. Erin started as the director in April of 2011, and she's done a lot of work in safety and protective service and health outcomes for older adults and people with disabilities. And she's been a very strong support to the commission as well, and we're really happy to have her as a leader in our state. So where are you there?
Trying to be quick.
You're being very
Keep
quick.
us on time.
Oops, there
Sorry,
we go.
Judy. Good morning, everyone. All right, come on, Oregon. Let's have some energy here for our federal partners who want to hear from us. This is an amazing opportunity for us here in Oregon. Thank you for that and for bringing the conference here to Lebanon, of all places. Thank you for driving through the farmlands to be here. I'm sure many of you were wondering, as was I, if we were headed in the right direction as we came to this beautiful site, but I'm glad you all made it. It's amazing to think that a conference in Lebanon can sell out in a matter of days, hours, weeks, and that we have a full house, and I'm excited about the energy and insight and intellect that's in the room today, so thank you for being here. In Oregon, we can't help but take pride in all that we've accomplished on behalf of older adults that happen to reside here who decide to come here because of how fantastic a place it is to live. We should be really proud. We had some pioneering efforts that came decades before us, who set the bar really high in terms of a vision for our state around what it should look like to age, both in terms of health and healthy environments and places that we want to be able to live, and also in terms of a long-term care system that supports people to live at home and in community, and with choice and with dignity and with independence. And those are values and a vision that we hold very true and fast in our hearts, and we should. When I go around and I meet with the different staff who do the work on behalf of our agency and on behalf of all of you, I always ask them, so what's going well and what's keeping you up at night? So I thought I would talk about a few things that are relevant to today's discussion that I think are going well here in Oregon, and a couple of things that keep us up at night that we're looking forward to you all having some conversation about today. So what's going well here in Oregon? In terms of the seniors in the state who are low income, it's extraordinary that 87% of them get to remain at home or living in community settings. We can boast of that fact here in Oregon, and we should, because those values that I talked about have really driven a system that supports individual plans for people that allow them to be able to live with dignity, choice, and independence in whatever way is best for them at the right place at the right time. We've accomplished much in that regard, and it's been a lot of hard work, and a lot of you in this room were part of that, and I appreciate it. We also feel good about our third in the nation ranking around several things. I'm going to read them because I won't get them all right unless I do, but affordability, access, choice of setting and provider, support for family caregivers, and effective transitions. That's quite a list, and we're proud to be third in the country. We'd love to be first, though, right? So let's talk about a couple things that keep us up at night that we need to keep working on together. And I will say, others today are here to impart their wisdom upon us. One of the jokes is some of the first people who speak know the least, so I'll just throw that out there for you, but here you go. So one of the things that keeps me up is that women and people of color tend to have the least saved for retirement. And even beyond that, 48% of all Oregonians will rely only on Social Security for their retirement savings. That will afford them to live with about $12,000 a year of income. Oregon ranks in the top 5 states in the country for hunger and food insecurity among older adults. 1 in 3 Oregonians age 65 plus fall every year, with 20 to 30% of those falls resulting in bruises, hip fractures, and traumatic brain injury, which ultimately compromises the ability to live independently. Health disparities among people of color in this state remain stubbornly high, and access to care in rural and frontier Oregon is exceedingly difficult, especially for specialty care like gerontology and mental health. We screened over 35,000 abuse and neglect reports in 2013, And we saw nearly a 40% increase in substantiated abuse involving older adults that live at home or in community settings. Oregon seniors and people with disabilities are estimated to have lost over $11.5 million in savings and equity in 2013 as a result of financial exploitation. We clearly have work to do. That's why you're all here. Just 2 years ago, my grandfather, at the age of 92, passed away in an assisted living facility here in Oregon. He was an amazing individual who greatly influenced my life. He survived abuse as a child, the Great Depression, a mental health challenge that threatened his career as an educator, but he taught me many, many things, many important things, like how to waltz and to polka, how to drive a tractor, how to bake, how to garden. But some of the most important things he taught me were these, and I think you're going to apply them today to the work. People can do anything if they put their minds to it. In my case, around the time of potty training, that looks like this with my grandfather. Papa, I need to go potty. Mind you, I'm not potty trained yet. Well, then why don't you just go? You know where the toilet is. Okay, so I did. My mom says I was potty trained after that. So people can do anything if you put your mind to it. We are put here on this earth not for the good of ourselves, but for the good of others. Hard work pays off. So as you put your minds to some of the most pressing challenges here today of our time, you will be asked to set aside what might be in your own personal best interest for the good of our nation, for the good of all Oregonians. And it's abundantly clear that the hard work that you do will make a difference in the lives of many, many people following the outcome of today and the recommendations, setting the course for the next decades of change and innovation and pioneering spirit that we need to have around some of the challenges we're facing now.
I'd now like to introduce Peggy Bray, the Director of Multnomah County Aging and Disability Services, and also a Commissioner on the Governor's Commission of Senior Services. Peggy serves as the Director for the Area Agency on Aging for Multnomah County. She is a person who gets things done, in my opinion, and she's had over 30 years of experience that she brings to this work, and we're really fortunate to have her in our state. Peggy?
Really lower. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce State Treasurer Ted Wheeler. A sixth-generation Oregonian, Ted Wheeler cares deeply about Oregon and the state's financial health. Since being appointed and then elected in 2010, he directed efforts to implement money-saving technologies, strengthen access to data, authorized fraud lawsuits against firms that misled investors, earned an upgrade in Oregon's credit rating, and revamped the Oregon 529 College Savings Network with lower costs and more options. He assumed a leadership role in economic development, convened business leaders, and spearheaded a new statewide blueprint dubbed the Oregon Investment Act, and was approved by the legislature in 2012. He brings a strong management and financial background to the office of State Treasurer. Before entering office, he worked in the financial service industry, and his career included posts at financial institutions, including Bank of America and Copper Mountain Trust, where he was a senior manager. Born in Portland and graduated Lincoln High School, he is, I believe, a Scorpion and likes long walks on beaches. Right? Virgo. Good, Virgo. Thank you. The town of Wheeler, located in Helen Bay on the Oregon coast, is named after his great-grandfather, and he earned an undergraduate degree in economics from Stanford, an MBA from Columbia, and a master's in public policy from John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. So a little bit of a slacker, but, you know, Oregon is a very welcoming state. The only other thing I would like to say is, so I've been here 3.5 years, came from Michigan and came right to Multnomah, and all I have heard is what an awesome leader he is. He was with the county from 07 to 10. And when I mentioned that, when I introduced myself and mentioned that, he said to please thank the 6 people in Multnomah who said that. So the only other thing I think that you could do next is like stand up. Think about it. Please join me in welcoming Ted.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today, and I appreciate that introduction. And I asked her to roast me, because the worst thing you can do as a conference is invite your state treasurer to come and speak right before lunch. What were you thinking? I also am a little nervous today. My level of nervousness is now going down. I was worried as I was watching the last part of Ellen's presentation that she was actually up here speaking and typing her own subtitles on the screen over here. And so for the last 10 minutes in the back of the room, I've been just mentally trying to practice speaking and typing at the same time. And now I realize there's somebody much more gifted than I sitting in the back of the room who takes care of that. So I'm now at ease. I want to talk to you about one subject today, and it's a timely subject because it's a subject that's being discussed by the Oregon legislature, and it has to do with the issue. Crickets already? I just started. I haven't even gotten to the funny parts of my speech yet. Okay, I'll up the game. I promise. I will up the game. So the issue that I want to talk to you about today is retirement security. It's in front of the Oregon legislature. It's timely, and I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room that it's an extremely important issue. I don't want to start off with too many facts or figures, but I do want to give you the results of two recent surveys that I think tee this up better than I could in my own words. There was a survey recently conducted, and it was a national survey, and it looked at all of the financial issues that are confronting American households, and it ranked all of the issues. There were some 20 different financial issues that were being ranked, and of all the issues, by far, the number one issue confronting American households, the one that people worry about the most, the one that keeps people up at night, is their ability to take care of themselves financially through their retirement. And as if that's not significant enough, there was a subsequent poll that was conducted that I think even gets more to the point about why this is so important, or how important this is to ordinary folks. By a factor of 4 to 1, Americans are more afraid of running out of retirement benefits than they are of their own deaths. They're 4 times more afraid of running out of money than dying. To me, that really captures how concerned Americans are about this subject. And this is a well-trodden category of interest. The National Institute of Retirement Security has been tracking what they call the retirement deficit for years in this country. And that deficit today, the difference between what people have saved in this country for their retirement and what people need for their retirement, that deficit is now estimated to be somewhere between $7 and $14 trillion. It's huge, and it's growing. So that's sort of the big picture. This is an issue that's being addressed nationally. We're not just taking it up here in the Oregon legislature. There are some 20 other legislatures around the United States that are taking up this question of retirement security, and how do we help people across this country prepare adequately for the financial aspects of their retirement. And I want to tell you that it's a bipartisan issue. There are red states and there are blue states taking up this issue. This isn't a Democratic or a Republican issue at all. This is something that state treasurers around the country are deeply interested in. We've spent a tremendous amount of time. You know, when we get together, everybody assumes we talk about boring stuff. We do. But we also talk about this. And we invite every year to our national conference, we invite one person who we think is a global financial leader, to talk about any issue that they want to talk about that they think is relevant to state treasurers around the country. And last year we had a fellow by the name of Larry Fink come and speak to us. Now, with a name like Fink, he probably got picked on a lot as a kid. Nobody's laughing at Mr. Fink today because he's the founder and the CEO of BlackRock Financial Services, which is the largest money management fund in the world. And when he came to speak to treasurers from around the nation, the issue he wanted to talk about more than any else was our longevity combined with our lack of retirement resources. And he described that difference, our longevity and our lack of resources, as being the number one threat to the United States economy in the years ahead. That says something. And I mentioned that this is a bipartisan issue. You know, I knew this was going to be in front of the legislature, and I knew that it had to pass with bipartisan support. And so I convened a group of national experts to come and join me at the City Club of Portland. And the experts I invited are a group of people that work with me as part of a national coalition to talk about this issue and to help drive policies at the state level. And I invited two of my friends. On one hand, I had Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, who many of you know is the late Bobby Kennedy's eldest daughter. And on the other side of me, I had a gentleman by the name of Ken Mellman. Ken Mellman was George Bush's campaign manager, and he's the former chair of the Republican National Committee. There was no light between our positions in terms of our views about the importance of states getting out ahead of this retirement savings crisis. This is also not a new issue, as I mentioned. I hinted at that. In 2013, I was asked by the legislature to chair a commission that would take a look at this issue in the state of Oregon. And I was proud to do that. But I got to tell you, I'm not the first treasurer to be the chair of a commission created by the legislature to look at this subject. In fact, 20 years ago, the legislature impaneled a completely different commission chaired by a completely different treasurer to look at this same subject. It's old news. At the time, the issue was increasing conversations about the growing baby boom demographic and what that meant, particularly in terms of the solvency of Social Security. And the knowledge then as now about Social Security, and I hope this isn't news to anybody, it shouldn't be, Social Security was never designed or intended to be a sole source of retirement savings. So if you think that's the solution, I just want to caution you and remind you that the average Social Security payout in this state is less than $1,300 a month. The average. $1,300 a month tracks very nicely with the federal poverty standard. And again, that's the average. So that's what the legislative task force looked at 20 years ago. This time, the legislature gave us very clear marching orders. Bring in anybody you can who's an expert on this subject. Get different perspectives and listen to people so that you can understand and inform the legislature about what is the status of retirement savings in the state of Oregon and what should we as a legislative body do about it. So we took a lot of testimony. We heard from a lot of different people. We heard from nonprofit leaders, and they told us, and I know there's a number of nonprofit leaders here in the room today, and Peggy certainly understands this, the cost of caring for older adults who have not saved adequately for retirement is, if I had a chart, and I don't use charts because I can never get them to work when I want them to work, it would show a hockey stick, a rapidly, exponentially increasing cost of caring for people who do not have adequate retirement savings. That was the message we heard from nonprofit leaders. Then I heard from a group of people, my commission did, called behavioral economists. I know there's at least one really good economist in the room John Topagna is sitting just to my right. He's within coffee throwing distance. So I have to be careful what I say, but I didn't know there was such field as behavioral economics. Behavioral economics. I wish I'd known about this field when I was in college. Behavioral economics is the study of why we're so stupid. I mean, talk about job security. So behavioral economics looks at why we make decisions, particularly financial decisions, that we know are against our own self-interest. And the classic example is somebody who spends money today for something they need immediately versus saving that money for the long term, even though they know that they're going to need those savings down the road, and even though they're more worried about those savings running out than they are about dying. That's the study of behavioral economics, and it talks to the behavioral issues as well as structural issues that make it challenging for people to save for their own retirement. We heard from business owners and operators and their concerns and issues. We heard from people in the financial services industry. And of course, we had robust debates about the appropriate role of state government in this question of retirement security. Long story short, or shorter in my case, because I never tell a short story, for those of you who know me well. But long story shorter, what we learned is that Oregonians are not saving adequately for retirement. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, part of the issue is demographics, and I think people here are pretty well versed on the demographics. The number of older adults in this state is going to double in the next 20 years. So we're an older state. We're an aging state is probably the best way to put that. And too many of those older adults are retiring and will continue to retire with inadequate retirement savings. Now, at this point, somebody always raises their hand and says, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean about inadequate retirement savings? Well, there's lots of different rules that experts use, and I'm not going to bore you with all the different rules. I'll just give you one that's widely used. One rule that's out there that financial experts use is that you should have saved, by the time you reach retirement, something in the neighborhood of 8 times your wage. So if you make $50,000 a year while you're working in a career, you should have saved something in the neighborhood of $400,000 for your retirement. How are we doing as this state? Well, I assume Joyce DeMonin is probably here somewhere from AARP. They've been very helpful in providing data and information to this evaluation. What we learned is that about half of Oregonians have saved less than $25,000 for their retirement. And 1 out of 6 working Oregonians between the age of 45 and 64 have saved less than $5,000 for their retirement. So effectively, a lot of Oregonians have no retirement savings whatsoever. And that helps explain why people here in Oregon, as across the nation, are so concerned about this particular issue. So there's some bad news that I have to give you. I know elected officials don't like to give bad news, but I'm an exception because I'm a state treasurer, and it's my job to be a wet blanket and deliver bad news. If you are a woman, if you are a person of color, if you work for a small business, which, by the way, most of us in Oregon do, or if you're young, you are disproportionately more likely to have inadequate retirement savings. Now, here's where this crosses over from economics into social justice. Think about that irony. And it's a cruel irony, but think about this irony for just a moment. Women are less likely to have saved adequately for retirement. Who lives longer? Women do. And yet there are structural barriers that make it difficult for women to be able to save for retirement. So the conclusion of the task force was this: Oregon should make available to all Oregonians who do not have access to a retirement plan through their place of employment a voluntary retirement plan. The task force further said this plan, this voluntary plan, that would be available to all people through their place of employment if they don't have access to a plan, it should have a number of specific attributes. First of all, in addition to being voluntary, the plan should be easily accessible. And here's where it gets controversial. This is why it's not a slam dunk, assuming that an Oregon retirement plan will pass in the House or the Senate. Because it turns out that access really means gaining access to retirement benefits through your place of employment. Consider this. People are 15 times more likely to save for their retirement if they have access to a retirement plan through their place of employment. This isn't about whether that's right or wrong or whether it's fair or unfair. Them's just the facts, folks. People expect to get their benefits through their place of employment, whether it's health care benefits, whether it's insurance benefits, and certainly if it's a retirement benefit. And the reality is, in this state, something like half, I think it's 47% to be specific, about half of Oregonians do not have access to a retirement plan through their place of employment. That's the biggest structural barrier. It helps explain why, even though there are 30,000 private sector retirement plan products on the market today, so many Oregonians and so many people in this country are still poorly prepared to save for that retirement. It's got to be at the place of employment, and then people are 15 times more likely to save. In addition, we recommended something called auto-enroll. That's a fancy way of saying when you get the job, you're automatically enrolled in the plan. Congratulations. Somebody hands you a form and says, you are enrolled. It's that simple. You have the ability to opt out. You can get out of it. You don't have to do it. It's still voluntary, but you're automatically enrolled. And this comes from some seminal economic research that was conducted in the 1980s, and I don't remember the author, and I usually do. Maybe John knows the name of the author. But they did some work internationally on automatic enrollment programs, and what they concluded is it overcomes a huge behavioral barrier. The difference between being auto-enrolled and not being auto-enrolled is significant. If people are auto-enrolled in any kind of a plan, they are far more likely to participate. They are far more likely to make larger contributions to that auto-enroll plan. And follow-up polling shows that people really like auto-enroll and they're satisfied with it. So that was the second one. There were a number of other things we discussed. The plan should be simple, and for me that means an IRA-like product, and there's some legal reasons why I want it to be an IRA-like product. The legislature was clear. There could be no liability to employers under federal ERISA laws. There could be no ongoing financial liability to the state or taxpayers. In fact, the proposal encompassed in the bill in front of the legislature, and that bill, for those of you who follow these things, is House Bill 2960 and Senate Bill 615. They're the same bill going in different directions. Those bills make it very clear that there will be no cost to taxpayers. There will be no guaranteed returns. There will be no coverage of investment losses. The plan must be self-sustaining, meaning it will be completely paid for out of fees charged to those who voluntarily choose to participate in the plan. It'll be portable, so it'll follow you from employer to employer or from employment into unemployment and back to employment. And last but not least, the resources will be pooled and professionally managed to maximize returns and keep costs at a minimum. I want to finish by saying this. It's not a radical new idea. We actually based this on a program we already have in the state of Oregon that's highly successful, the Oregon 529 College Savings Plan. I don't know if anybody here, a couple of you participate in that plan. Full disclosure, I certainly do for my daughter. But it's a very simple strategy. We have a board of citizens that are appointed by the governor and the legislature, they're there for transparency and public accountability. Their job is to take all of these attributes and create a request for proposals that then they put out into the public, and private sector companies then compete for the right to offer this plan to Oregonians. And it's that board's responsibility to provide the oversight and due diligence of that private sector provider of the plan. We do it in the college savings plan, and it works brilliantly. We'll do exactly the same thing with the Oregon State Retirement Program. The bottom line is this: if we in this state cannot find a way to encourage people who can save for their own retirement to voluntarily do so, the cost to taxpayers will be staggering, as more and more people rely instead on costly government-provided safety net services instead. I believe, and I know many of you do too, that we need to protect the safety net for those who truly need it. So let's create this low-cost, easy to understand, easily accessible plan for Oregonians who don't currently have access to any retirement savings vehicle through their place of employment. And let's take some of the uncertainty out of retirement for the future. I hope you'll join me in encouraging your legislators to support Senate Bill 615 and House Bill 2960. And let's be on the vanguard of those states that choose to take action and do something about this national crisis. I thank you for having me here today. And I appreciate what you're trying to do here at this conference, and I want you to know you have my complete support. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much to Ted Wheeler for his thoughts and ideas and humor and leadership. It's wonderful. So, as you can see, lunch is being served, and during lunch, we're going to have one more presenter, and Mary Yeager is going to introduce that presenter, but I'll give a quick introduction to Mary. Many of you may know Mary. She's a strong advocate in aging, and she is the Aging Veterans Services Director for Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs. Mary was just tapped for this new position at ODVA after serving 5.5 years, as, again, many of you may know, as our state long-term care ombudsman in Oregon. Hard word to say. She holds a master's degree in both gerontology and public administration from the University of Southern California. And her career has truly been focused on advocacy, both in long-term care and child foster settings. Please join me in welcoming Mary Yeager.
Okay, let's start at the presentation with a little practice of the word ombudsman. 3 syllables. Ombudsman. In this almost time to reauthorize the Older Americans Act, we all need to be talking about the Ombudsman program, which is critical not just in Oregon, but across the nation. Although that's not why I'm here today. I've noticed this morning that our speakers have only mentioned the word veteran 6 times. So for all our presenters today, the word veteran has only been said 6 times. That is about to change with our noon speaker, Kelly Odegaard. Kelly is the administrator and CEO of the brand new Oregon Veterans Home, which many of you may have passed on the journey to get from the highway to this beautiful setting today. How many of you saw the new Oregon Veterans Home? Okay, after Kelly does his presentation, you are all going to want to at least take a drive by, if not walk through and get a quick tour. The Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs, for the first time in its 70-year history, is representing 4 generations for 5 wars. We are blessed to partner with the Veteran Care Centers of Oregon, who hired Kelly as the CEO and administrator of this phenomenal new national treasure. So not only is it a treasure for the great state of Oregon, but literally across the United States, this is now heralded as the new model that all veteran homes would like to emulate. Kelly brings to this job over 25 years of incredible operational background, not only in opening facilities, managing them, applying the Eden principles, culture change, but he's a heck of a nice guy, and our veterans and staff are delighted and honored to work with him as well. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Odegaard, Oregon Veterans Home, to the podium. Kelly?
Well, that $20 I paid her certainly paid off, didn't it? Why, either that or my mother wrote that, I'm not sure. We do invite you after the conference today to make the long one-block drive over to the Oregon Veterans Home here in Lebanon, and we have staff all ready to go to give you tours of our campus. Love to have you come over. Okay. First of all, I want to apologize for my voice. I've been experimenting with every over-the-counter drug I can for the last week to try to make sure I maintain it, because last Wednesday I had no voice whatsoever. So I've been battling a cold. It's not late life puberty. I just wanted to point that out right now. I also was excited to receive the invitation to come speak, although now with all the other subject matter, I'm kind of wondering how it fits in, but I think you're adults, you can figure that out for yourself. And then Ann started explaining to me who else was going to come and who I'd be following. Great, follow the state treasurer. Perfect, no problem. I followed the secretary of the VA back in DC a couple months ago. Okay, I can do that. And then she said, oh, by the way, we have someone coming kind of at the last minute that you might find interesting. I said, oh, really, who is that? And she said, Dr. Bill Thomas. I said, really? I'm going to be talking half of my presentation on the concepts he invented. So it's kind of like me telling you how to build a car, and Henry Ford is sitting in the audience. So, Dr. Thomas, thank you. Where are you? I saw you come in there somewhere. You slept in there, and hopefully you went back out to get lunch. So hopefully he'll give me some latitude here a little bit. Now, also in this audience are all the heavyweight folks of senior services in Oregon. So I apologize if this is much of a repeat. I just want to do a brief review on culture change and the history of culture change. And I'm pushing this, but it's not working. So how are we doing? So we'll just go here. And help me out here. So most of you are probably also wondering what the flowers are about. It was my gift to you, actually. It's, my wife doesn't like receiving flowers, so I had to buy them for someone, so I bought them. Actually, no, those are the flowers we received from our recognition inspection that we had in March, and the president of Western University, just across the street, sent those to us, and I sent her almost an identical bouquet for passing their accreditation survey the same week. So the person who won on that was the florist shop, obviously. So many of you, I'm not sure, may or may not be aware of Western University, which is right to the south of us here. It is only the second medical school program in Oregon. And the week after next, they actually are graduating their first class of doctors of osteopathic medicine. So very exciting. Okay, we're getting queued up here.
We hope.
We hope. Thank you.
New clicker.
Okay, new clicker. Didn't get to practice with this one. So just in a brief review, many of us understand that conditions in long-term care are not always optimal. I've been operating facilities since 1990, and I can't say I regret to say that several of the facilities I had probably fit in this model, because there was a lot of good work and very dedicated professionals in our institutional settings, giving their lives every day for minimal pay, caring for seniors. But unfortunately, there's a lot of issues that Dr. Bill Thomas is teaching in the Eden Principle still go on untreated. And one of those is loneliness, That is a typical example of an institutional architectural model in long-term care. Even in what we consider our beautiful assisted livings in Oregon, most of them have a fairly institutional look to them. And unfortunately, that is kind of the old school model of what goes on in long-term care, unfortunately, either due to staffing models or staff that aren't properly trained or lack proper guidance on how to engage people in life. So culture change, just a brief review. I assume everyone in this room is fairly familiar with culture change. If you are not, see me afterwards, and I'll bring you up to the 20th century. So it's been around for a long time, starting in the early 90s with the Eden principle, and has been adopted even by CMS. And when they issued their Artifacts of Culture Change document several years ago, yet I still am appalled to find many of my peers in industry are not instituting cultural change techniques and strategies. Culture change in action obviously requires some physical, organizational practice changes, physical changes to the environment, changes in relationships with the stakeholders, and different workforce models. Again, the Eden Principle, early 1990s and still to this day, is their mission of improving the well-being of elders throughout all settings. And their vision initially was to eliminate loneliness and helplessness and boredom. Later in the 1990s, I became aware of the Pioneer Network. The Pioneer Network is a national movement, open source information sharing of ideas and innovative practices, and is a very valuable resource to facilities. Okay, so we've told you some about the problems in long-term care, not that you didn't already know them. What are some of the solutions to those problems? And we hope that by what we present today on the Oregon Veterans Home, you'll see a possible model of a solution to some of those issues. I am very honored to be a part of this organization, to be a part of this project. I was on the ground before all the facility was built, actually before most of it was built, and we started with one employee, me. We have now 80 employees, and we're on the way to about 225 employees when we're full. That is an aerial view of the campus, and if you look to the left, you see a credit union. If you look farther to the left, you see an open field, which is now full of apartments that are being built, and right next to that is this center. So we're very close to the campus. The campus is a 12.5-acre campus with about 133,000 square feet of buildings. This is a campus-wide overview. We have 4 neighborhoods of houses together. 3 of those neighborhoods have 3 houses, and 1 has 2. And being a good military organization, they're named Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. Yes, sir. Obviously, somebody knows this military terminology. This is a snapshot view of one neighborhood of 3 houses. And you could see that they're joined together by a hallway, or a spine, we call that, which has some offices, storage space, a bather room, and some other amenities. The small home model. How many, first of all, are very familiar with the small home model or the greenhouse model in this room? Just to understand the audience. I suspected as much, so I'm not going to belabor that point. I'm just going to tell you specifically what our campus is like. So we have, in our homes, we have 14 veterans per home. Each house is self-contained, as they should be in a small home or a greenhouse model. They have an open, fully equipped kitchen that is unique and quite different than an institutional model. It's available 24/7 for our veterans, and believe me, we're using that 24/7. There is a family-style dining room right off the kitchen, pretty much just like at home, and then a nice fireplace that I got to tell you the veterans love to congregate around. And now you and I probably wouldn't think about sitting around a fireplace in the summer, but we're also not 96 years old, and most of us in this room. It's very comforting for them. And then all of our rooms are private rooms and private bathrooms. Probably one of the few skilled nursing facilities in Oregon that have 100% private rooms. And we have 154 private rooms on our campus. In addition to that, and a little difference from the greenhouse model, small house model also incorporates a community center. And that community center has a large commercial kitchen. We have a rehab gym. We have large meeting rooms, and then administrative offices are there. So there's a shot of one of the houses. All 11 houses are exactly the same, and on the exterior edges you can see are the bedrooms, and then the living space in the middle, and the kitchen in the heart of the home, which is generally the heart of most of our homes and where most of the activity goes on in our homes. One of the differences at the Oregon Veterans Home in Lebanon, besides the architectural model, which is pretty key, we couldn't do this if we didn't have this architectural model, is the use of universal workers. So my understanding is that we were one of the first in the state to obtain a waiver from Oregon administrative rules that prohibit CNAs from doing what sometimes are referred to as crossover tasks. So our CNAs, who we refer to as personal assistants, also finish, cook, plate, and serve the meals out of the home and kitchen. They also provide recreational therapy or activity direction and one-on-one activities they lead themselves. They do the laundry of our personal veterans. And, oh, by the way, they also do direct care, like a typical CNA would do. So how do they do that with the state minimum staffing ratios? They don't. They do that with a staffing ratio of 1 to 4.66. So in a 14-bedroom home, I have 3 CNAs on my day shift, and I have 2 on my other shifts. And we're able to run 12-hour shifts because it's not as physically taxing as a traditional long-term care. So now you only have 2 changes of faces in the day and 24-hour period. And our licensed nurses also work 12-hour shifts. Some of the other features that help make the overall model work is that we have self-directed work teams. Part of that includes self-scheduling. Gosh, you expect adults to be responsible enough to be able to schedule themselves? Sure, we do that. They also have their neighborhood or house meetings to try to address and solve their own issues. And then our leadership model is also unique to the home. And this is something that Tony Decker of West Care Management, who works with us, has developed over 20 years of study in getting beyond the management model, where you're getting into what we call a third gear, where people are intrinsically motivated to do the right thing and to do a good job. Here's a shot of an actual live dining in process. Can you pick out the caregivers, the family members, and the veterans in that picture? Because they're all there sitting at the table. And if you look closely, you can even pick out the program director for the Veterans Home there. It's kind of hard, and that's the answer I want to hear. It's difficult. They blend together. They're all one community. Here's a shot of the front entrance. I'm going to mix in my program here some photographs that we've taken. Most of the photographs are professionally done. I'm proud to say this was taken with my iPhone on a really pretty day. Isn't that beautiful? Here are some of the professional shots of our exterior of our campus, Alpha and Bravo neighborhood. This is some walkways that were added with some value added savings from the construction to add covered walkways between our neighborhoods, because last time I checked, it rains in Oregon once in a while. And we really don't want to be taking our veterans in and out of the rain. Okay, most of you, if you're familiar with the small home, you should be familiar with some of the advantages that you expect. And in our campus, they generally mirror the same advantages you're aware of. Some of the things we notice right away, it's calmer, it's quieter, there's less hubbub going on. One of the number 1 causes of falls in long-term care is noise. A study in Minnesota proved that one of the number 1 causes of falls is noise. And think about a traditional institutional setting. Nurse's station, change of shift, mealtime. For those facilities in the past, still using personal alarms. Alarm goes off next door. I want to go see what's going on. So that's a big advantage. Certainly, the kitchen in the home is one of the largest advantages. We have about 80% of our population will be male versus a traditional long-term care facility. It's just the inverse. It's about 80% female. So our guys are big eaters. It's a pretty important part of their day. And the number one determinant of quality of food and long-term care is, take a guess. Choice. That's my guy right there. Choice. That's it, absolutely. Did some culture change studies about, oh gosh, it's a long time ago, 15 years ago, and one of the first areas we looked at was dining. We did not change cooks, we did not change menus, we did not change recipes. All we did was institute a menu select program for our residents in a McMinnville facility. I went back about a month or two later and talked to a lady who had had some complaints about the food, and I said, how is it? She said, oh, it's much better. It was the same food, exactly the same food. But she had a choice in it instead of getting what everybody else gets in a facility. Lots of meaningful activities. That is one of our main drivers, is to not just do entertainment activities in our facility. That's where people's reward and satisfaction comes from in life, is meaningful activities. We actually have a collaboration with Comp Northwest, the Western University, where our veterans are going to participate in creating shingles to give the graduating physicians, hanging out your shingle, giving those graduating physicians these shingles made out of cedar wood. So that's a meaningful activity. They're producing something, they're unique, they're necessary for the outcome, and they're going to feel very good about that. We have lots of volunteer support, which is obviously very important in every facility. Being a veterans-centric facility, everybody is interested in coming and serving the vets who served us. Here's a great example. This young lady that's kneeling is one of our first CNAs that we hired, and the gentleman seated there is our very first admission of a former Marine named Don. And you can't really see in the picture there, but that's a baby rabbit that she's handing him. And we have a lot of volunteers and some staff that come in and bring in pets or animals. One of my social services directors is a purveyor of goats and raising goats, and she brought in some of her kids the other day, and they just love it. You know, most of our seniors grew up in an agrarian society. They grew up on farms, and the first time I ever saw, back in 1990, when the FFA folks came into my facility and put a rabbit on the lap of a lady who was curled up and disengaged. She opened like a flower, just like that. And I thought, that's it right there. It was amazing. Some other shots of our exterior, our campus. We have 11 courtyards as beautiful as that. That is not a painting. That's a real picture of one of our courtyards. Absolutely stunning landscape on campus. Lots of outdoor areas with hard surfaces. Most of our folks obviously are in wheelchairs or in powered scooters and those type of things. They have lots of places they can get outside. Okay. So we shoot a little pool. We do a little gambling. No, we don't. Mary, we don't do that. But we had this pool table donated by a local organization. This gentleman to the left, the one to the right's not a gentleman, beat you to the punch on that, Van. He is a gentleman who usually is pretty independent with a walker. He's kind of like a weeble wobble. He weebles and wobbles, and sometimes he falls down. Guess what? Shooting pool, he sits down. It's not his turn. He stands up, walks around the table, takes his turn, sits down, stands up, sits down. Well, you can't design a therapy program that's more effective than that for this guy. And he loves it. And it's a great way for the staff to interact with our residents. A few more shots. I don't know how we're doing on time. Where's my cue card lady back there? That was a shot of our interior canteen. I love pictures of families. This is a family. The veteran is on the right side of that picture, has since passed away. Family at a Valentine event. They're actually a problem. Now, why would you ever say a family's a problem? Because unlike an institutional setting where families come in for their 5 minutes of assuage the guilt, visit mom, and get out of there, they love it so much they stay all the time. So we're having a lot more people in the dining rooms, families staying with their loved ones, participating in activities, and it's almost an issue for us because they enjoy it so much. Just a shot of our interior space and our large activity room. Do a lot of things there. If you come tour, this is a kind of an accidental creation. This is when they added our walkways, it created this wonderful indoor-outdoor feeling space that we call a solarium. Here's a couple of our guys doing a little bowling practice. The gentleman on the left, I understand, has actually schooled the staff on bowling with the Wii, is what they're using there. More interior space. Oh, incidentally, when I looked at the schedule to find out, well, when's lunch, you know, because I'm a guy, I like to eat. When's lunch? Oh, by the way, you're speaking during lunch. It became abundantly clear to me that, guess what, you're not getting any lunch, so that's all right. The camera puts on 5 pounds, so I probably need to lose that anyway. More interior space, lots of wayfinding signage. Here's an actual shot of living dining space in one of the homes. Much better in person. I invite you to come over. That's the opposite shot towards the kitchen. And here's my friend Al again. This is our goal, is to create a community where the veterans and their families can thrive. That is our vision statement for our campus. We want to learn and institute all the best practices that they're out there in the industry. We will stumble, we will trip, and we will make mistakes, but we want to be the tip of the spear. Nothing excites me more than being on the front end of innovation. Who wants to be the dog in the back, right? The view never changes. So we want to be on the front edge of that. And honestly, this facility, I could safely say, is probably one of the finest veterans homes in the country. And who better to receive something of that quality and that caliber than our veterans that served us so well. So, I have time for questions. I have no idea where we at. No, you're good. Okay, done?
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to see. Oh, you have a question? The question is, have you seen fewer admissions to acute care?
The other question is, I didn't see any gardens. Yeah,
Gardens.
A picture of gardens, but we do have several raised beds in the back part of the property that those starts they use in that picture window were to.
Just pick up one of those mics. Yeah.
Those starts that the gentleman that I pointed out in his room were starts for our raised beds outside. So that's going to be a big part of it. We're going to work with the local community schools that have a very robust seeds program to grow things. So.
And acute care.
Okay, and acute care. So we have about 43 veterans in our home now. We've been operating since October. Don't have a really good long-term prediction of that. You know, really, the biggest part about re-hospitalization comes down to the physician's decision, not as much about the environment. Sorry if that's bursted anybody's bubble there. If you've got physicians who understand what capabilities SNFs have and what their staff can do, and understand that just because it's Friday night and they're spiking a temperature, you don't have to send them to the emergency department. We can probably care for them. And then the other is use of physician extenders. We have a nurse practitioner that comes more often. And thankfully, Samaritan has heeded our request to have more staff in the facility and have hired a gerontologist who will become our medical director June 1st and will be pretty much full-time in our facility. So that will probably be the biggest impact on keeping folks from the hospital.
That's great. We want to give you a little time to eat and talk amongst yourselves. So at 1:15, we will get back together for the last panel. And thank you again, Kelly. Let's give him a round of applause. The plan is that each of you is going to take 3.50 minutes to briefly describe the group's issues and recommendations. So I don't care what order we go in. So anybody ready to start? We have elder justice, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and retirement security, but that one does need to be last. Are you ready, Fred?
Yeah, I'll jump right there.
Okay.
So I am only ready because my group was awesome that I got to work with. So great conversations in our subgroups. and where we were at with recommendations. We started off looking at the 2014 Elder Justice Coordinating Council recommendations that came out at the federal level. And somebody brought that to the table. Ellen Clem, not surprisingly, brought that to the table as a starting point for our conversation, just to kind of help us think through what the feds are looking at. With the subgroup conversations and then our ensuing 45-minute full group conversation, I think really what, 3 of the 4 recommendations are things that need to and can be focused. And this is definitely our Oregon recommendation to the feds in the national level, the White House, of what can be accomplished or needs to be accomplished. I mean, all 4 of them are for the national level. And then 3 of the 4 are things that can be looked at internally in states, either whether it's through legislative action, Governor's Commission on Senior Services, or different county and state approaches. So the first one, and this one very specific at the national level, is the need for more national coordination on elder justice issues and elder abuse. There has been recently, just in October, a renaming of an office at the Administration for Community Living. They renamed the Elder Rights Office, the Elder Justice and Adult Protective Services Office. But as Marie Cervantes confirmed for me, or at least as far as she's aware, there's been no communication from that office as far as what national coordination is going to look like. But I think in the national level, I mean, and I'm even aware, I work with that office. It was a first step to rename it, to have a central location for issues of elder justice and adult protective services. But I'm aware that at least for the last year or so, they don't have a director of that office. They're in the process of hiring one now. From even what it was named previously. So there's just a lot of work to be done at the national level. And for our purposes, and I need to go back and look at my notes for our full recommendation, but it's, the need for the data coordination and collection, the awareness, just a lot of the research that needs to be done. There needs to be a lot more national coordination. So I'm going to put a lot more meat onto that for the products coming out of today. Secondly, a public awareness campaign, and this is definitely one that can and should be done at the national level and can be done at the state level. And we need to spend a lot more time looking at all abuse types was emphasized in our work group. There was some emphasis in some of the smaller groups on financial exploitation in particular, and because of the costs of financial exploitation, more awareness, more education. But the larger group that we had wanted to make sure that we were emphasizing all abuse types, sexual, physical, emotional, psychological abuse as well. An emphasis we can start moving towards, or we should start moving towards some kind of a marketing campaign. And then as a component of that, enhanced supports for victims, and ideally before people become victims, more supports, more resources, infrastructure. So there's a lot of work to be done around there. And again, a lot more even meat than that on that public awareness recommendation. Third is around law enforcement supports. Actually, I'm realizing there actually was 5. So law enforcement supports reconsiderations. We had some conversation, again, not only at the local level, what better tools can we be providing to our law enforcement to get involved in elder abuse situations that are even arguably, and in some instances, out of the hands of what adult protective services can do. We need more considerations, but definitely at the federal level as well, with the FBI, their Department of Justice at the federal level. So that would be a third recommendation. Fourth recommendation is around fiduciary reforms, fiduciary education, so guardianship, conservatorship, powers of attorney, rep payee. We had some conversations specifically around that. Definitely a recommendation at the federal level with Social Security Administration. And I am aware of some activity in that department with Social Security Administration in a subgroup that I've had the privilege of being a part of in the last 6-8 months. But there's much further to go there. A fifth recommendation specifically around, and this wasn't an initial recommendation out of the subgroups, but in the ensuing conversation of our full group really took form. But more, what I'm kind of framing is community approach supports. Around more not just multidisciplinary teams that do exist at the county levels, but more, this interdisciplinary approach to prevention issues. I would categorize our conversations and there was some conversation around, bringing in community health approaches and entities to have some conversations about how we can better really do the proactive prevention of elder abuse. So I will stop there. I'm probably over my time already. Thank you.
All right. Well, not that it's a competition, but the Healthy Aging people rocked too, and came up with 3 excellent issues. And what they did really well was bundle. We were a bundling group. So I think everyone sees themselves reflected in these. So if we were to look at age-friendly communities, which is also building a community for all ages, it was really clear that this is intergenerational and multi-sectoral approach, but using that age-friendly foundation and infrastructure. Looking to meet the needs of Oregon's diverse communities, really recognizing that a county is a county and no county is alike, that uniqueness that comes to Oregon. And then thinking about what we would need as higher leadership support and leadership support in general as this movement builds from cities, counties, up to the state, but really having the governor endorse this and see this as a vision and a goal. It's aspirational and inspirational, but we know how to do it and we can do it. There's an infrastructure to follow. So getting that commitment from the governor, potentially having a commission, an age-friendly communities commission or communities for all ages commission, having a policy advisor who focuses on to the governor for healthy aging and age-friendly communities. Really looking for that outreach and that communication strategy. So how do we increase awareness and really have people thinking about the importance and what it means to age well in this state and starting that early on? And having a very strong commitment to empowerment. It was really important that communities have the ability to mobilize and empower themselves to identify their priorities, but even more so, really honoring the independent living and the importance of people to be able to engage in their own health and make their own decisions and be part of that instead of being told what to do. So that commitment to that authentic communication and to build trust to make that happen. Recognizing that there's a lack of trust out there maybe in some of the service agencies that are providers and those who are the end users. The second issue is looking to an integrated and comprehensive services that are reimbursed by Medicaid and Medicare. So that kind of captures both the problem and the goal and the solution. But really recognizing that mental health, dental health, physical health, and a long list that we came up with, that we get out of our silos and that we come around true patient-centeredness, which would really mean having multiple care providers in contact and working with each other to help successful optimal health happen for our patients and our community members. So moving out of our siloed sectors, looking at interdisciplinary care and learning. So what does that look like from a medical education perspective? How do we train that earlier on? Again, more community awareness. I think that has really come out loud and clear, and I just heard it in the prior session, is that there needs to be a lot more talking and a lot more broad communication strategies to get conversations happening in people's homes. And then more research and understanding what the data can do, collecting more data and doing more research around how we age and causes of disability. And the last issue, while it kind of is part of those other 2 issues, but was really important that the group didn't want to lose sight of, is just mental health in general for all of us as we age and how that doesn't get lost, that it's really called out and such a key piece of what we need to do so that it is integrated into our care and that it's not seen as a negative, that people aren't afraid to talk about it. And this was also really important for caregivers and caregiver health and what that means to take care of those who are taking care of us. So that's the high-level summary. Thank you.
Well, our group on long-term care was a group that rocks too. Unfortunately, they had a rock for a facilitator. And I cannot find where our sheets were, which I was going to go to. But there were several things that really did come out. And first was every group picked transportation as one of their issues. And the thing that really came out on transportation was that it isn't simply medical and getting people to a particular service. It's about the social aspect. And the way I like to put it is, we haven't moved that far if we've moved from warehousing seniors to putting them in storage units where they're not connected with the community. And people want to be connected. So we need to do that. And that transportation itself was a socialization aspect for people, as well as a mental health deal in terms of just getting out of their place, and we needed to take it. And of course, funding is you just can't get around it. It's a key issue around transportation. But there also is a need for better coordination of all of the transportation assets within a community. That we need to look at how we have a central hub where you can find information and where the different resources can be used across programs and across ages where possible. And then finally, that there needs to be safety taken into account in terms of it, and talking about public transportation where seniors often don't feel safe within that, but also just training those drivers and stuff to be sensitive to the needs of the individuals that they're working. The other were two around culture. One was culture change, which was spoken up this morning, and that is that we change the concept that aging is an asset, not a problem within our culture, and looking at that. And some of the sort of solutions were things such as age-friendly communities. In other words, don't talk about simply making it accessible for seniors, making it a community that's accessible for people at all ages. We don't need that dichotomy, because things that work for seniors also work for young parents with kids and a stroller or a bicycle or something, that the similar types of concerns are there. And then talking about intergenerational coordination around assets. In other words, building programs where we use the assets of the seniors, which may be wisdom, may be the caring, the knowledge they have, around that of younger people, which may be the physical ability to do things. And looking at how we build that. The one caution was, not all older people want to be around younger people. So recognizing the fact that, this is individual. The other cultural was the whole idea of making our services culturally responsible. And we were lucky enough in our group to have some participants from the deaf culture. And often that is a culture that is ignored when we are looking at serving people. And so they brought some good points about that, that we need to look at each. And once again, it gets around to being person-centered. Each individual is different. But service providers need to be aware of the culture of that person and how that might affect the situation. So there needs to be training around this awareness of cultures and how to deal with. The other thing that came out was still, it's just like transportation. It's been an issue from the beginning. We discussed it the first White House conference that I was at. We're discussing it again. And that is better information on services. That there's still, even with our ADRCs and stuff, our problem. Some of the individuals went to it around deaf services. Most of the deaf services they found on our ADRC or on the website were in New York, not in Oregon. And yet they were aware from their information referral of a lot of services that were available. So we need to go across our various databases and see how we get to them. And then we need to ask, especially our various subpopulations, let's look at the service, our information and referral. Is it working for you? What isn't working? Are you aware of other services and stuff? And let's see, person-centered was the other big thing. And that really crossed a lot of barriers and actually came around in each of our other discussions. The fact that we need to, one, take into account the cultures of the different individuals. Two, that we need to be training our caregivers, but not just the caregivers, people throughout our spectrum about the various cultures, so that they're even aware that there are issues. And one, I think, interesting one was the whole issue about caregivers and caregivers following the person from setting to setting. Because one of the big issues for individuals, and I think that's especially the case for people who feel very vulnerable, is the trust building. And so having somebody who you've learned to trust go with you to the next setting to help, maybe not do all the care there, but help you in that setting is a real key issue to people. So those were the main ones, and we had a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, I think, and it's going to be a real experience, I think, for state staff to look at those, because I think there were some very specific types of things that will be helpful.
Thanks, Don.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Okay, so first I'm going to report out on our retirement security breakout, and then I have some closing remarks on behalf of the department. So I'll start with our breakout, which I think was also just an amazing group of people. We came up with quite a few recommendations, and I'm going to try to go really, really fast so that I can tell you what all of them were, because I don't want to leave them out. So the issues that came up most prominently were around Social Security, the adequacy of benefits currently, and then how to expand and protect SSI, and also the retirement and disability programs within Social Security. And then also related is the fiscal health overall of all of those programs. The second issue was the lack of financial education in general, cost of living in general, the issues around family caregiving, and the overall lack of savings and the fact that we need to rebuild the three-legged stool. So our recommendations within Social Security, there were a number of recommendations. So to address the fiscal health of the programs, or at least part of the program, we talked about removing the earnings cap, so on the payroll tax. So you would get rid of that, which would increase the longevity of the program and the sustainability of the trust fund. And then we would increase all benefits, SSI and the retirement and disability side, to at least, and this was the very minimum, was 120% of federal poverty. And then also we had consensus, I'll just say, around all of these recommendations. There were a couple that we didn't reach total consensus on, but these were the consensus of the group. We would use the Consumer Price Index for the elderly to calculate the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, so that it was a truer reflection of the expenditures for older adults. So their cost of living increase would reflect their expenditures. The second recommendation is around positive media attention about retirement security in general, and that can be done through all different forms of media, but we really thought that that would be something that needs to happen right away. Also, fiscal education and awareness and continuing education, starting in schools and then moving beyond. So throughout the lifespan, we would continue the conversation and the education. And a couple different ways of doing that were recommended. One would be to have an evidence-based pilot that would, be a pilot around education. And it would be a long pilot, because you'd want to measure over a long period of time whether you were successful or not at educating people about retirement security. And then also, it was raised that an intergenerational approach is effective. One of the stories in our group was about how when individuals are younger, maybe they don't understand why some of their earnings essentially are put into a plan that they would use later, and they wanted that in their paycheck immediately. And the older people in the workforce were able to say, no, trust me, you're gonna need that. And so having that sort of intergenerational connection about what you need when you're older would be important in educating our youth about retirement security. Then we should address wage inequality, or eliminate, We came up with a more strong word at the end there that we had consensus around. So eliminate wage inequality. And some of the sub-issues are around gender disparities, disparities for people of color. We would address age discrimination or elder discrimination, and then make sure there's increased employment opportunities for older adults. Support the opt-out retirement plan discussed today by Ted Wheeler. Rebuild defined benefit plans and strengthen both defined benefit and defined contribution plans. A couple of ways to do that are to take away incentives that encourage conversion of a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Make plans a little more portable, like they've done in Canada. Encourage really long-term savings, and look at penalties within defined contribution plans to see if they really deter people from cashing out. Because I think in our group there was some indication that, or evidence around the fact that some of those penalties, like the 10% penalty, really doesn't disincentivize people from cashing out, and make sure people understand the value of staying in tax-advantaged plans. Then we would create more innovative ways to save. So thinking about things like an app that would go on your phone and automatically a certain amount of change you might have go straight into a retirement savings plan, as long as there were the appropriate protections in place around the new technology. Address housing. So we endorsed the statement, we had consensus around the statement, housing as a human right in our group. And then also national action around increased revenue, where all entities pay their fair share. And we would look at a new way of budgeting so that we're capturing future savings related to current expenditures and investments. So those were our 10 consensus recommendations. Thank you. Thanks for everyone who participated. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Department of Human Services Aging and People with Disabilities program. Our director, Mike McCormick, really wanted to be here to thank you at the end of the day, but because it's legislative session, he did get pulled back to Salem for some legislative responsibilities, but he was here all morning, got to hear all the great panel presentations and our keynote presentations. He really sends his best, and he was really happy to see such a packed room here today. Both Mike and myself, we really look forward to the recommendations from all of these breakout sessions, the panels, the speakers. We want to work with you in an ongoing fashion, and other stakeholders, the legislature, anyone who wants to get involved, so that we continue to be able to have the right types of programs and policies for older adults and people with disabilities in Oregon. And I also want to say thank you so much to Judy Strand and the Governor's Commission, the entire Governor's Commission on Senior Services. So if some of you, I think some of you are still in the room, if you could stand up, I'd like to recognize all of your support. Thank you. So we wouldn't have been able to have an Oregon version of the White House Conference on Aging without the wonderful Governor's Commission. So thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank all of our extremely dedicated staff at Aging and People with Disabilities at the state. In particular, Ann McQueen has been our tireless conference planner and advocate.
And then she's had all of these other staff and volunteers around to help today. And so if you could all stand up, just want to recognize you and thank you. And I think that's all I have. So thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to turn it back to Judy.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, such a great job. I'm so proud of all of you. And what we're going to do is to work with the facilitators. Staff are going to pull things together and have a tight report that will go to DC. And I'd like to just say from the commission standpoint, we're going to use these ideas for our state work too, from a commission advocacy perspective. So this is just like a dream come true for us. And in light of that, one of our struggles has always been to get statewide representation to feed ideas to the commission. And so a couple of you suggested that we see who's here from different parts of the state. And I realize some people have left, but could you stand or wave if you're on the I-5 corridor? Okay. Southern Oregon. Yeah. Central Oregon. Okay. Eastern Oregon. Okay, we're going to have to go there for the next. Oh, yeah, there they are in the corner. Okay. And how about the coast? Okay, great. Well, that's really good to know. We'll probably know more from your registration, too, so we can figure that out a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you'll get the information sent to you there if you gave us your email. So you'll get to see all the recommendations that you just heard. And then these are my notes from Anne. I'm supposed to tell you to wear those buttons. There's buttons on your table, and it says, "Ask me about the White House Conference on Aging." And that's so you can share what we've done. And then also to remind you to do the purple evaluation sheets, please. We need feedback. And if any of you are interested in the tour of the veterans facility that we heard about, there's some people meeting at 4:45, and you can get a tour right away. And then just before we go, I do have something for Anne. Anne needs to come up here. Okay, this has been very hard to hide. But this is thanks to this. So this is from the commission, and we thank you for your incredible work, man. Thank you. I mean, I'm telling you, this woman has not had a lot of sleep, so we need to be very kind to her. She's put her all into it, and it wouldn't have happened without her, so. All right, I think we're done, and I feel very inspired. I thank all the speakers, the panelists, the facilitators, the sponsors and contributors, the planning committee, the volunteers, and mostly I thank all of you for being here, and I'm really, really happy with the results. So bye for now. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee.
Here in Salem as much as I can,
every
because
American
Salem
would
is my
want,
home
which
base.
is a little common sense government.
American, young, old, rich,